I still think the brick and mortar schools are something worthwhile, but I have not seen the program that I would love to have students graduate from. Even in the world of hiring people from Art Center and CalArts and SCAD, I don't think those schools yet do a really good job of teaching people to be artists that are employable in the workplace.
Hey Hatchlings, welcome to the Motion Hatch podcast. I'm your host, Hayley Akins. Hey, thanks for tuning in. It's great to be here. We've got a great episode for you this week. Firstly, I just wanted to mention that we'll be launching the freelance contract bundle in October. So if you're listening to this in September, you can go over to motionhatch.com/contract to learn more and also sign up for the mailing list. If you're listening to this in October, just head over to the same URL and you can find out more about the contract bundle and hopefully get access to some of the great bonuses that we're going to have going on and things like that. So today I had Dorca Musseb and Ryan Summers on. Ryan is the creative director at Digital Kitchen and Dorca is a motion designer from New York. We talked about education for motion design and we went into whether you should go to art school or not and the pros and cons. And we also talked about the rise in online courses for motion design and, you know, what they're doing well and what they're not covering and things like that. So it was a really, really cool, fun conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hey, so thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, definitely. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, so really excited to be here.
Awesome. So I thought we should start with asking you guys a bit about your education and how you got into the industry. Do you want to go first, Dorca?
Sure. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City, and I graduated a while back, graduated in 2006 from motion graphics.
Do you want to just tell us a bit about what you've kind of been doing since you graduated?
Sure. I graduated, as I said, in 2006, and I've been working as a motion graphics designer since 2010 with various clients like Comedy Central, BET, MTV, Showtime, and I'm now working for Art and Industry doing a Patriot Act show, which is going to be really interesting.
Awesome. That sounds really good. So how about you, Ryan?
I'm going to be jealous of you guys. I really did not enjoy my time in school. Actually, the school I went to here in Chicago is about to close. I'm rushing to try to pay back my student loans before it closes just to say I beat them. But I graduated back in, I think I might have you beat, Dorca. I graduated in 2001 from the Illinois Institute of Art here in Chicago. And it was a really unfun experience. It was really disappointing. But that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk about education now, because I think schools have gotten better and there's a ton more options for people.
So that's interesting. Why did you think it was disappointing?
They were really short-staffed. They actually had the only people that were teaching were people who had recently graduated, and they went out to the industry for a year or two and then came back and started teaching, not having found work. The actual animation department was really small. The graphic design, all the other kind of fundamental skills were okay. Like I had a great life drawing teacher, I had an amazing typography teacher, which I think that stuff, I didn't intend on going into motion design at first. I really was into character animation. But as I kind of moved towards motion graphics, having those two things ended up being really, really beneficial, especially the typography.
Cool. Yeah. That's interesting because I didn't really do like a motion graphics course either. I kind of did like a film production technology degree, which had like some After Effects and Photoshop and Illustrator modules, but it was mainly about like video and editing and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just interesting how like not everybody who becomes like a motion designer or like creative director or whatever started off kind of doing like a really animation focused degree. So I thought I'd just point that out. So do you think that motion designers should go to art school or university?
That's a really big question. I mean, for myself, I didn't know that SVA had a motion design program when I went. So for me, I kind of discovered it while I was there. It's like, oh, they actually have a motion design program. And it is like one of the oldest, I think. I actually think that one of the first graduating classes was in 2001. But back then, even, it wasn't what it is now. I was taught some After Effects, mostly Final Cut, and I wasn't allowed to go into 3D. I had to apply to another it was a whole lot of bureaucracy in order to get like even to 3D. So the design program has, like, as he said, that it has come a long way, I think. So when I first graduated from there, it was very different. As to whether people should go or not, I think it really depends on what the aim is, what the aim of for you to be in the industry. I feel that I wanted to speak about this specifically because it's such a knee-jerk reaction that sort of like I've seen in forums. Whenever somebody asks the question, there's always two or three people that are like, no, you don't need to go if you know, in order to have a job in this industry. And that may be true in a technical aspect, but when it comes to design principles and, as Ryan said, you know, typography and things of that nature, it is just as important to learn it. So it really depends on what your focus is on the business. If you only want to focus on animation and the technical side, I feel then you probably don't need to go. But if you want to do conceptual and typography and design principles and things that can be taught and are taught in art school, then I feel that, yeah, that is a good idea to go.
So, Dorca, you're sort of saying that you feel like, you know, a lot of the technical stuff might be covered more in like online courses and in other areas, but you don't feel like kind of conceptually, you still feel like art school is the best place to go, really?
So when I was going, art school was the best place to go. How's that? Let me put that caveat in there. When I was going, or even when Ryan was going, I think art school was the only option. That definitely is changing. Options are opening up, but there definitely has to be some sort of education in art and design. And I feel it's really bizarre that it's like you don't need to learn that part. And I'm like, no, you really do. It is, what we do is motion design. The principles do need to be there. It is important to learn these things. And I feel that there's such a resistance in that way. But to go back to what the question was, you did say, like, was that the only option? No, I don't think that nowadays is the only option. I do feel strongly that people should learn about art and should learn about design. But right now, I don't feel is the only way to go. When I was going, perhaps when Ryan was going, I feel like there was Ryan, you mentioned that you didn't have a great experience. For talking to other people and even myself, my experience was okay. What I feel is the issue, or continues to be the issue, especially in the United States, I don't know about like other outside of here, is the price tag that you have. And I don't feel it's worth any longer to have that high of a price tag. I mean, when I went, I still have student loans from when I went, and now I hear it's double the amount. So right now, is it feasible to go versus before? Before I could go and it was okay, but now it's just so much money to go to art school that it doesn't seem worth it. And what that does is like it takes away the education from people who have the potential to be great designers and great artists. I just don't feel it's as accessible as it should be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I don't know about that much about the fees and stuff in the US. Like in the UK, I know that it's like way not as expensive. Like I think we're on like, I don't know, like, is it 9K a term or something like that? I'm probably wrong. Everyone's like probably shouting like, what are you on about, Haley? You got it wrong. But it's definitely not like, I heard you guys say something like $200,000 or something like that. Like that's crazy. It's not that expensive in the UK, but it's still getting more and more expensive, right, to go to university. So I just think it seems like in the US, I'm like, wow, well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to go like if I had to pay that in the US. It just seems kind of crazy. I mean, what do you think, Ryan?
I think if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I would have been very stridently saying no, absolutely not, don't go. And I'll tell you how to do it otherwise for like a fourth of the cost. 2 years later of creative directing in the Midwest of the United States and desperately trying to find employable artists that can work within a system, I think my answer is you don't have to. And I don't think the right curriculum actually exists yet, but for the right person, you should. And I think for a lot of the same reasons Dorca was talking about, I think that there's a lot of really bad schools. I think that there's, at least in the United States and Canada, there's 3 or 4 good schools. I don't think, having been in LA for a long time and hired people out of school, I don't think that there's a great school yet for motion designers. It really, really bothers me how much most programs are software focused. And I think even Dorca was saying that, like, I didn't even get into a 3D class. Like, I think that stuff is perfectly learnable outside of a brick and mortar school. But what you get from being in a school, being around collaborators that you may establish relationships with for your entire career, having mentors that you can go back to time and time again as you move through the different stages of your career, of being a graduate to being a rank and file artist to maybe becoming an art director or a creative director, having those people you can follow up with as you kind of grow, and then having an institution that you can start to give back as well, as you teach or you give demo reel reviews or you tell people what it's like in the real world. I still think the brick and mortar schools are something worthwhile, but I have not seen the program that I would love to have students graduate from. Even in the world of hiring people from Art Center and CalArts and SCAD, I don't think those schools yet do a really good job of teaching people to be artists that are employable in the workplace.
I think that's a really good point. Like, there's so many points that you said there. I do think that, for my part, I feel there's a huge disconnect. So in my side, for example, yes, I learned the conceptual and the design, but I wasn't really able to get the technical. And to me, there has to be a marriage of the two. There has to be a way for me. I can have very good concepts, I can have very good design, but if I don't know how to execute it properly, then how am I going to get hired? And I feel there's a huge disconnect there, where a lot of the times they just don't teach you how to even get your concepts onto the screen. And so when students go and to get hired, then they can't get hired because they can't properly do their jobs. So you're right. I don't think that there is a program, even in my own school. I think my own school got a little bit better about getting those technical skills up since I graduated. But there's still a disconnect between what the industry is doing and what art school is doing. There's a huge gap there.
Yeah, I agree. And I would like to add one thing to that pie. You talked about the art creative side and then the technical kind of skill side. The thing that I see the biggest dearth of is schools teaching people how to be a professional, how to be a working professional artist. And I think some of that is being filled in, like with things that you're doing, Haley, with, like teaching people how to become a freelancer, things that Joey does, the freelance manifesto. But I think there's even a step beyond that of just how to work well with others, like the soft skills that I don't see a lot of people coming out with. And it's kind of just instinctually someone is great to work with. They're easily art directable. They understand where and when that their voice needs to be, they need to push their voice and say, like, I have something to say. And where and when they need to kind of have the humility to be like, this is the time for me to just get the work done. None of that. I have not met a student coming out of school that felt like they had 3 classes that taught them how to be a working professional, separate from being an art director or a creative director and setting up, for your career growth, but just how do I work well in an office with other people and fit into a team and also manage my growth as I go along. I don't think that's being done at all anywhere.
I definitely agree with that. I think that if there's one thing that kind of bothers me, and maybe I'll just say it, is the fact that art school somewhat prepares people to be in a creative director or in an art director role. They don't prepare people to be starting from a junior position. So when they come in, they've spent, at least in the case of the United States, they spent all of this money in art school. They walk in and they feel like, well, I've already spent all of this. I've gone to this school. I need to be XYZ. Is not the way to approach it. And so a lot of the times, I think there was an excellent article that someone wrote in Medium. I'm so sorry, I'm really bad at names and remembering these things, but it was called Do Not Become Another Unhireable Designer. And I can give you the link to it, so if you want to link to it. But it is an excellent way of looking at it. And the guy poses the question of, like, when did art school start teaching that you can only put stickies on the wall and that's an actual job. It's a very good article to read because it really does explain clearly the soft skills that he's talking about.
Yeah, I can tell you guys a little anecdote that kind of forged my opinion of this. When I was working at Imaginary Forces, I had just kind of worked my way up to be able to be a junior creative director on small jobs, and I was given a team of artists that had all just graduated, new freelancers to the company, and each one of them was from a different school, right? There was one from Otis, one from CalArts, and one from Art Center. Very simple job. They all needed to create boards based on a client brief. It was Thursday. They had Thursday, Friday, and if they wanted to work on their own just to kind of elevate themselves, they had through the weekend at home, and then on Monday, come and show the boards. We'll pick them, assemble them, put a pitch together for Monday. Two of the people, one had a ton of boards, but they weren't super finished. One had 4 boards, very limited, but they were all finished, ready to go pieces. The other person, who happened to go to Art Center, walked in and they said that they really didn't like the script. So they decided to rewrite the script because they thought that they had a better idea of what the client wanted than the client themselves. And my reaction was like, oh, that's great. Let me see your boards. Great that you were, going further than the assignment. Awesome. And like, oh no, I didn't do boards. I think I'm the art director on this job. So I thought I would just rewrite it. And those other 2 people could go ahead and, do the boards today. And I'm like, you guys were all, at the equal level. You all had the same assignment. Why would you this is completely unusable. 1, you're not a writer. 2, you're not the art director, creative director on the job. Why would you think that this was acceptable, to do? And they were told that, at the school that they went to, that they were creative directors coming out of school, that having received their degree, having graduated, that doing the work or making the work was beneath the level of education that they had received, and that they were already just born into the world as decision makers, that making was wrong, but talking and thinking was right. And we had to literally had to fire the artist that day and explain to him that you may be a great art director one day, but you need to follow the assignments. You need 2 to 3 years of seasoning. And that if you feel you're an art director or a creative director, that's great. Go out and start your own company and look for that work. But you have to fit into a role within a system and do your assignments. It was astounding to me that somebody would go that far. And I know I'm not alone. I know that's happened several times. But I think what you're saying, Dorca, is right, is that people are paying $150,000, $200,000 to get into these schools and go through the system. So the school, to attract the people who can pay for that, are saying, we'll make you a CD right out of school. You can skip all the hard work. You can skip all the grinding. You'll just come out perfectly formed and, be at the elevated position that everybody wants, but doesn't necessarily have all of the experience yet. So I totally back that up. I think that it's almost a purely financial reason for why we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I've sort of got a similar story. We had when I was working as a senior motion designer at this internal production company at Google, we had a few students from an animation course come in and be interns and stuff. And I'd be like, okay, so, sit here, do this job on After Effects, for the client, just whatever it was pretty simple stuff, right? And they just didn't want to do it. They just wanted to make their own stuff in their own style. And I was like, yeah, but this is the job, right? This is what you've got to do. This is what the real world is like. You have to, like you say, you can't just come out of university or art school, whatever, and be a creative director straight away. I mean, that's my experience. And I know we have RCA here, Royal College of Arts, and there's a lot of great directors that do come out of that. But then I think they're kind of, seems to me sometimes they do really well, but sometimes they're kind of a bit lost in where they fit in. And also, what you were saying before, really heavily on the business side of stuff and client relations and things like that. That's just people don't get taught that anywhere really. I guess that's why I'm trying to do this podcast and stuff and all these things, as well as trying to help a bit with that. But yeah, I think it's very lacking in art schools and online at the moment too.
I think that's the disconnect that I was talking about. I think that was the disconnect that I was saying happens with art school. They do not teach you those skills at all. I can tell you right now that I was not taught what you were saying about even sitting somebody down and saying, this is what the colors are going to be, this is what the client wants, having a brief, none of that is taught. What you're taught is to come up with your own style and come up with your own ideas, which is great and it has its place, of course. But they do teach that this is what everyone is going to be what they're going to be doing, and this is not what the real world is like. There's a distinct and severe disconnect, and that's the reason why when you ask the question about whether or not I recommend people going to art school, I can tell you that I wouldn't change some of the experiences I had there. My peers, the teachers that I had, I went to a school that is very old or has been established a long time ago. I had incredible teachers. I had incredible mentors that have shaped and changed the way that I see things and the way that I think about design and art. And I don't think that experience can be exchanged. However, the rest of it, the disconnect that there is, I do have an issue. I do take issue with not preparing the students for the real world, specifically in business. I've been running with Emily Subanovic. Both of us have been running the New York chapter of Pen Animation. And I've been doing monthly brunches with women from all over the place. Some of them went to art school, some of them didn't. Most of the people who have not gone, have just graduated, the number one question they have is, how much should I be charging? Because they have no idea what the business is like. There's a deep divide and disconnect. There's a huge gap on that side of the education. And I've seen, other people say maybe what we should do is not give $100,000 to art school, maybe just do mentorships instead. And unfortunately, I'm going to be honest, that's a great idea. But if I go to a bank to ask someone to give me $10,000 to give to somebody to mentor me, they won't, but they will give me a student loan. So it's sort of like, I feel like things are switching and things are changing because there is more online access now, which I feel is great. I am so excited about that. There's a few courses. I think one of the closest is like School of Motion's like design bootcamp. I think it's very close, but it still doesn't cover in depth what you do in art school. You spend years thinking about design, thinking about everything that has to do composition, and you study it deeply with people. And that's something that it's a really good experience to have that one-on-one and peers, like, and put your stuff up and people critique it. It's an experience. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. So it is a very good experience. I just wished that it was, one, more accessible to people, that you're not burdened with so many student loans or so much money afterwards, or two, that it taught actual skills, actual real life skills.
Yeah, so there's definitely a few things there. Like what you're saying, like I'm glad you mentioned like School of Motion and like the online stuff, because I think for me, I feel like it's like a great thing. And like we're right in saying that, yeah, it's not perfect yet, all these online courses and things like that. But I really appreciate that they're there. And I think they're doing like a great job, like MoGraph Mentor, School of Motion, like the future, like they're kind of trying to do this stuff. And I really appreciate that because, it is online and it is accessible to people who are like, can't afford to go to art school or university, and like people in different countries, like anybody can take those courses, right? And that's awesome. So I just wanted to kind of say that, because I think that although I agree, I think that, there's just more to be done, but I think it's growing. And I think that online courses and stuff are like, it is a good thing to me. I'd love to know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I'm a little biased because I taught at MoGraph Mentor for a couple of years, I think, and I'm probably going to go back in the next semester or two. I think it's amazing when I would teach to be able to have a room full of 5 or 6 people, and I would literally go around the room and I would be in Ireland, South Africa, somewhere in Southeast Asia, someone in New York, and someone in California all at the same time. Opening people's eyes to other people's experiences as designers and as animators was, you can't get that even out of school. So I think it even offers something beyond that. I think the problem with it all is that it's a patchwork quilt right now, right? Like I think we are in such a huge transition where the old way was I graduate from at least in America, high school. I'm 18 years old. I have enough money to give someone to basically trust that I will create value with that money, right? Like I'm trusting that I go to Art Center, and if I put the time in, $150,000 will create enough value in me that I can make that money back and have a successful career. Whether or not that's true or not, there isn't a one-to-one in the online world, right? It's such a patchwork quilt where it's like, okay, well, do I give School of Motion $800 to learn this? And I think people are kind of almost taking it like they're Neo in the Matrix, where they're like, I've done 12 weeks and now I've downloaded After Effects and I'm now an After Effects artist. And then I'm going to do 12 weeks. It's like buying a collection of books. I mean, I have all these books back here, and half of them were bought when I was in school, being like, all right, if I buy Illusion of Life and I read it 3 times, I'm now an animator. If I buy, this book about photography, I think people are starting to just collect online courses and take them and do them. But there's no real, the one thing that a large brick and mortar school theoretically does is that they give you the curation of what you should learn, when you should learn it, give you the pressure of having a deadline, and then put you with a room of collaborators. And you get all these happy accidents of walking past a room and seeing someone in a fashion class doing something, and then sitting down in a common square and seeing a photographer do something. We still haven't captured all of that theoretical potential from a brick and mortar school that protects you for 4 years and allows you to just kind of become who you are. But I think for the people who are proactive and have some kind of vision of what they want to do, like I want to be a creative director, or I want to work at Buck, the online stuff is allowing those people to kind of really kind of fashion that together. But I think there's another stage above that. Like I almost feel like there could be a MoGraph mentor, like someone who's actually saying, hey, all this stuff that's out here, don't sign up for all the Learn Squared classes, but this one class from JR Knest, buy that. And don't take these 2 School of Motion classes, but take these 3. And then when you're done with those, take class 2 in MoGraph Mentor. Like I think there's almost like a Spotify playlist of motion graphics education that's kind of coalescing out there that could drive people through. But there's just so much stuff right now. There's so much to learn. And then not to go too long, I think the opposite of that is that this happened in character animation with Animation Mentor. There almost became this kind of like cult-like following and path that started becoming, if you want to become an animator, you have to go and do this. And then that was fine for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And then there was a big pushback in the industry against Animation Mentor because everyone's reels look the same. Everyone's performances look the same. Everyone's expectations from the industry were the same. And their enrollment actually dropped. And actually it created this huge explosion of other places to teach. But I feel like we're kind of almost getting to that point where it's like, if I hear more quotes of people like quoting Chris Do about specific things and not having their own opinions, like those are great, but it's not gospel, right? Like everything doesn't have to look like Ash Thorpe. Everything doesn't have to move like School of Motion, and your opinions of the business don't have to exactly be Chris Do's. They're good that they're out there, but you need to build your own viewpoint, your own voice, and your own opinions on that stuff, informed by it, but then adding to your experience and talking to other people. So I feel like there's a little bit of this echo chamber mentality that's starting to build in the motion graphics industry that scares me a little bit right now.
I think those are growing pains.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think those are definitely growing pains. I feel that I'm going to be the first one to say I am really excited about online courses. I feel that it's opening up to other people. Like I said, one of my biggest issues with art school in the United States is the accessibility. As a person who comes from a lower socioeconomical background and didn't have access to even computers, like I was talking to a fellow animator and 2 fellow animators, and we were talking about how in our spaces there weren't even systems of computers or Adobe, and the one girl was like, oh, you can just hack it. Or back in the day. And I said, well, we didn't even know what hacking was. So as a person who comes from that kind of background, I am really excited that these things are happening, that are more accessible, that will allow other voices to come in and share their vision as much as other people are that are going to art school. I feel really excited about that. I feel that it is growing and it will continue to grow and it will continue to expand. And I feel that slowly but surely, because the other thing that you do get with online classes is that real life experience. So I feel that if done well, if it's immersive enough, because my issue with some online classes is that it's just, as Ryan said, it's 12 weeks and then you're done. It's 6 weeks and now you're an expert. But it takes a lot longer than that. It takes a lot more than that. Just because you took a course, it doesn't mean in art school, you do get years of just focusing on typography, of just focusing on composition, and having that mentorship and that guidance. So to me, I am excited about where it's going, and I cannot wait to see where it ends up. But at the same time, I do agree with the fact that it is starting to look repetitive. At the same time, I will say that my school has a student portfolio review, and from what I hear, things are looking the same as well in art school, because they sometimes tend to go with the trend. And it seems like they're not focusing on what the students really like to explore, but they're focusing more on like, this is what the trend is, this is what you should be learning. And that also hinders students from then getting work at other places, because they're only doing, right now, cell animation and 2D seem to be the biggest trend. And so that's what they're going for. I feel like it's growing, like the online stuff is growing, and I feel like I'm excited about it and see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the word you said that really hits home with me is just diversification across the board. Like, that's what I was so excited about with MoGraph Mentor, was seeing so many people who didn't even realize that they could really make a career out of this. And they all are having these kind of epiphanies at the same time, being like, oh, this is actually, I'm actually kind of good at this. And wow, everybody's reacting to my thing because it's so different, because it literally is coming from a different time and a different geographic place and a different world experience. Like, not even just talking the United States of black versus white versus, like, someone from South Africa getting the same assignment to animate something about coffee versus a kid that's in Southeast Asia, and seeing the experience and what the even starting point is and what they want to talk about, but seeing 5 or 6 people all doing the same assignment. It is something that really bothers me here. Like, we have 3 other creative directors across 2 other offices, and we meet up every Friday in a situation similar to this, right? We see each other over online and we can talk to each other. And it's really disappointing, because if you saw the 4 of us and you squinted your eyes, you couldn't tell the difference between us. We're all 35 to 40 years old. We're all bald. we're all dudes. We all have beards. We all talk the same way. We all have the same life experiences. We all have the same influences. We have the same things that we dig. We probably wear the same shoes. Like, that is embarrassing for an industry that's supposed to be the gatekeepers, and it's supposed to be the tastemakers, and we're supposed to be looking out for all the voices, right? Like, in a world where finally something like the Colin Kaepernick ads at Nike happened, where someone somewhere decided to make an ad about the person and not about the product, and you see the incredible success in less than 2 weeks, like 37% jump in sales. And like, when everybody coming out of the schools all look and talk and feel the same because they're the only people that can afford to go to the schools, those are the people who are making the movies and making the TV shows and creating the commercials and putting up the banners and putting up the posters. Like, you don't realize, in a world that's built around marketing, in a capitalistic world, a very small select group of life experiences dictating almost all of that. And that has to change. It's going to change. It will change. But it should be something that we embrace rather than something that gets like forced on people. Like, we should be running towards it. And I think the companies and the places and the people that do, the schools that do, will be the ones that see the huge success. Because I don't think $200,000 a year schools are going to be the kinds of things that will continue for much longer.
I'm really happy that you said all of that, because I was planning to.
Oh,
I was planning to talk. It's okay. It's fine. I was planning to talk about the homogenization.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the word? English as a second language here. Okay, so I'll tell you my experience when I was going to art school, and this was, again, a little bit ago, but I can tell you right now, it has not changed. I was 4% or other of the art school, meaning African Americans, Latinos, and everything else was 4%. And I was bunched in with that 4%. So there's 2 things about it that I feel from my own experience that happen. One of them does have to do with art school being so expensive that it is inaccessible. Like I said, that's my one issue with it. The other side of it is it has to do with culture. It has to do with, like what Ryan said, is like not knowing that you can actually make money out of this, not knowing that you can actually make a living with this. And I can give you a perfect example of this. I had a fellow Latino coworker, and we were talking, and I asked him, I was like, I never really even heard of SVA until I was way older. And how did you find out about it? And he's like, yeah, my high school teacher went to SVA. He had been doing typography since he was in high school. And he did not know he could make a living out of making the beautiful typography he does. It is not something that in our cultures or in some cultures is, especially speaking for the United States or any person who's an immigrant, I can tell you that you're not encouraged to go into art. I mean, what, art school? Are you crazy? You're supposed to be a doctor. You're supposed to be a lawyer. You're supposed to be anything that can make money, not knowing that this is actually a profitable opportunity is just not even in our radar to begin with. That's why I'm excited about where the online classes are going, because now people are starting to realize, oh, this is something that I can actually do. And more voices are coming in and more voices are being heard. I feel like when campaigns fail, and you talked about a successful one, there's a lot of times that there has been some campaigns like the Pepsi one, for example, that completely failed. We know about that one. And the Pepsi one failed, and everybody was like, well, why didn't anybody say anything? Where were the people? That's because there's no voices in the room to say it's wrong. We're not there to stop that. And one of the reasons why we're not there to stop that is because we don't have access. And it is important to get that access. And I can tell you right now, it's changing. It's definitely changing. And I feel like more diverse voices are going to start coming in because of that. And I'm exceedingly excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the audiences and the customers will demand it. like all it takes is 2 films all of a sudden for the entire industry that's supposed to be incredibly liberal to realize that there's a whole other set of audiences dying to be served. I think the lessons we learned from Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians is that the rest of the creative industries aren't really as liberal as they like to sell that they are, or at least the people at the top, the gatekeepers, didn't realize it and aren't really aware of it. But I think the next step is all the marketing, advertising, all the other forms of entertainment will realize that there's customers that they have not been serving. And I think that'll trickle its way down into the schools. It will. Honestly, I think large brick and mortar, incredibly expensive 4-year art schools are on their way out because they don't provide. I think it goes back to that simple equation. I'm going to trust you to help me create value that I can generate for a career. I don't think that equation really plays out for a lot of people anymore, especially for the people who are going to be demanded to have in the industry. We see the same thing with actors. We see the same thing with musicians, that like there's a diversity that the market has not been able to fulfill, that it's going to happen somehow. The customers will demand it. The audiences will demand it. So we can either do it and get in line and actually embrace it, or it'll just steamroll everyone that's already in a position.
Get Out was another movie that was like definitely showed a very diverse side. It was a movie that couldn't really be categorized, which I thought it was fantastic that it was a little bit of everything. Yes, there is an audience there and there is a need. And I feel that, yes, art school, or actually I should say no, art schools are not catering to that. They're not prepared for it. They're not really counting anybody else in. Their diversity is not really there. And I can tell you right now that Haley, that I've been talking to everybody about this and other people about it. And someone mentioned the fact that they didn't even go to school in the United States. They actually went to an online Swedish school for design. And that was incredible to me. I thought that was like really great that they found an option and they found a really great design school elsewhere and didn't have to pay the US prices. So that's another thought about, I feel like it's an individual situation of what do you want your focus to be? And that I am exceedingly happy that nowadays there's so many options. When I went, I didn't feel like, as a person that comes from a different background, as a person that has a different view and perspective, I don't think I would have had a career had I not gone to the art school I did. It's true. But nowadays, I feel like there are so many more options that are available that need to be explored. And so when somebody says, should I go to art school? I feel strongly that you should learn design and you should learn art in any way possible, because it is this is a motion design industry. You should know more than just the technical. I feel strongly about that, but it doesn't necessarily mean like that you have to go to art school in order to learn all of that. Not anymore, I don't feel. There is one thing that art schools do still have, and I wonder like what Ryan's thoughts are about this, and that is they still have the name, they still have the clout. I mean, I can tell you alumni from art school do get each other's jobs. There's a strong alumni network for sure that I feel that online is starting to get there. But, and there is the fact that I can give you an example that in the senior portfolio review is something, it's a big deal. And a lot of people from the great places that are higher up go to the schools to recruit students from it. So that I haven't seen online yet. That I haven't seen, the big time industry leaders that are out there like Buck and other people go into the art school and recruit the students from there. I don't think that's happening online yet. I don't think that online really has that kind of a clout yet. But I can see it probably happening.
Yeah, I think it's happening, but it's happening behind the scenes. Like the really large schools have a fairly large budget to actually have job placement and recruiting and to encourage and imagining forces. I always was getting calls to go to the 3 major schools, come to the portfolio shows. They had recruitment people that I could actually call and be like, hey, I need a recent graduate that can do X. I think that happens, but it happens kind of in the back channels of Slack and Twitter DMs through School of Motion. I mean, I just know personally through School of Motion, through MoGraph Mentor, through just, email chains. For me, I actually like it because I feel like it's a democratization where it's really more what work have you done to create your personal network and what's your personal reputation. And then that stuff can be enhanced by the people you meet through School of Motion or MoGraph Mentor or The Future or Learn Squared or whatever. But I don't trust that someone who got the seal of approval from any of the 4-year schools that they actually are going to be employable. When Joey Corman sends me 3 people to look at, I don't doubt it for a second, right? If Chris Doe tells me, man, this kid is awesome, he's going to be a great art director, but he needs to be around these 2 kinds of people for 2 years, that kind of recommendation carries so much more weight than if somebody just had enough money to go to Art Center. So I think it's there and it's happening. It just hasn't been productized as slickly as like what a school's, the whole point of an art school now is to push you through and get you out and make sure you're getting a job, right? Like that's how they can prove that they have value. It's not the 3 years later, are they still in the industry? It's, did I get you a job within 2 months of graduating? So I think it's coming. And I think it's actually better. It just may not be something that's completely obvious to people from the beginning.
I feel like, yes, it is happening that way. You mentioned before that you're investing this much money on it and then you're getting something out of it. And that's no longer the case. And people are leaving the industry. And I can tell you, when I went to school back then, the teachers that I had were very specific about animation and motion graphics, and they wanted you to be focused on it, so that there was only 9 of us that graduated the year that I went. And animation is something that I feel that it takes so long to do that you have to be passionate about it in order to do it. They're now churning out a lot of graduates and telling them this is the place to go and this is the place to be. And within 2 to 3 years, they're out of the industry completely. They either go into print design or they completely get out of it altogether. And I don't think that's the right thing to do either. We're talking about over 100 graduates now that are going into the industry, and most of them are not finding work because, as you said, they're not being prepared for real life experiences and they end up leaving the industry altogether. So it's important to note that this is also a big issue.
Yeah, I'm letting you guys talk a bit because this is all great. And I think it's like, there's so much to be said and things like that. But I kind of wanted to loop back a little bit to the diversity thing. I really appreciate what you said, Ryan, about, the creative directors and things like that. I think that's true. I think we need more, I don't want to say like leaders in our industry, whatever, like more people, popping up, doing different things who are from different backgrounds, more women, more everybody, basically everyone, like just doing different things and thinking about the industry in a different way and kind of getting their voice out there. We just need more different voices, basically. And I just wanted to also, because what you said, Dorca, kind of made me think about my experience when I was younger and kind of what was expected of me and how I ended up going to university. It just kind of brought back to me this story of kind of when I went into like the career office, right? And I'm from the northeast of England, basically no one in my family went to university before I did. It kind of wasn't expected. My dad owns a bakery. So I went into the career office and I said, I want to go to university because I love learning. I didn't know that I wanted to be an animator or anything. I kind of fell into it. But I went in there and I said, yeah, I want to go to university. I love learning. I'm dyslexic, so I didn't get like super good grades or anything like that. I'm not very academic. So they kind of said to me, well, maybe you can work in your dad's bakery, which I just think is disgraceful. And it just like you talking about your experience brought that back to me. And I just thought, it's just like kind of people's perspective of you. And I think it's changing now. I mean, I'm talking like a long, long time ago. And now it's more accessible, but I'm really glad that I got to go to university, because if I didn't, I don't think I would have left my hometown, and I wouldn't have come to London, and I wouldn't have got all this experience of working, which is really what has, kind of just working every day on After Effects and stuff like that. That's what made me a motion designer. And then now me doing this came from meeting different people from different industries who have podcasts and things like that, and just opening your mind up to different people, even outside the industry, I think can really help you look back into the industry and say, like, I can do something different here. I can make a difference. I can speak about these things or different things. I can help other people in the industry with this thing because I've learned about it from someone else outside the industry. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think you said it. The word that keeps on ringing in my head, I think you said 2 or 3 times, and it can't be stressed enough, in my opinion, is people. Whether you go to school, whether you're just cranking away on your laptop, in your apartment, trying to push through the industry, if you're not trying to connect and share and help other people in the industry, I honestly think that that's the biggest differentiator. I talk to people every single day about how to get in the industry, how to, expand their career, how to maintain it. And inevitably, the work is important. Like, the work is the barrier to entry. Like, you have to be good enough to be able to be employed. But if you don't have the network of people to help you get where you're going, if you don't have the support structure to keep you going when you're down, if you don't have your mastermind of 3 or 4 people that you text and chat with and do something like this every couple of days to show your work and to make sure you're not going crazy, to ask for advice, if you don't have people in a creative industry, I don't think any amount of education, any amount of software knowledge, any amount of raw talent will really get you through your career and get you where you want to go as you kind of elevate as you go along. You've said it. I think Dorca said it. Like, I still think that whether it's in a building or it's online like this, like, that is the thing that school and education, I think, helps you start your career off correctly, is that you just have that core crew of people that you work entire careers with and through.
I think for my part, what I honestly, again, it goes back to accessibility. I feel, and I don't know if this is something that is more of like a larger question about art and design, because I feel like in many ways, maybe what happens is that people have these misconceptions about what art and design are. The idea that if you go to art school, you're not going to get a job is so stereotypical. It's like people really don't know what we're about. And why I'm excited about online classes is because it's demystifying the art and the design part of it. It can be taught. Yes, you have to have some raw talent and some eye and some sort of form of thinking, and you do have your own style. Yes, absolutely. But art and design both can be taught. And it feels to me that there is a massive amount of ignorance when it comes to that particular part of it, and it leads to people then not having that accessibility, or being told, like you were told, not to even try, not to even go to university, not to go to college, because just people in general do not understand that that this is a good industry that you can make money in. So it feels to me that it may be a larger question about, I don't like to put it this way, but I am going to put it this way. It's about the elitism of art and design, and how there's a certain aspect of it that is really ugly, and it's only accessible to certain people.
I think you could go really deep on that, right? Like, art has a socioeconomic barrier. And I think it honestly starts way before talking about college. Like, every kid draws, right? Every single kid draws. But think about when you stop drawing. or friends around you that stop drawing. It was either because it's like, why are you doing that? That's silly. Or why are you wasting your time? There's no reason to do that. Or you're really not that good. Why are you doing it? Right? Like, but every kid picks up a pencil or a crayon and just goes to town, right? Like there's a human joy in mark making, right? It's literally the like purest act of creation at the earliest stage of being a conscious thing, right? Like you can take something, you can put it on something and make something new. We all love that. That gives you power. It gives you personality. It gives you station. It gives you something of ownership. And that gets taken away from a lot of people at very early stages of life. And then it just continues to rinse and repeat, right? You're in high school and it's like, nope, you should focus on math. You could focus on becoming, like you said, a lawyer, becoming a doctor, becoming someone who can make money. And unless you're...
Or someone who works in their dad's bakery.
Exactly.
Just want to put that out there. Not everybody's parents are like, oh, you have to become a lawyer, you know? Like some people's barriers like are set way low. So
exactly. But
just wanted to put that out there.
Even at that stage, right? Like art is ridiculous. Like it's not even, I mean, I had the exact same thing. Like I lived on the south side of Chicago. When I wanted to go into art classes, instead of taking another science class, I got put in the class with the burnouts, right? Like the kids who were getting suspended. That's just where they dumped kids, right? Like that was just, oh, art. This is where you have to be in class. So here's the class, right? Like, and when the same exact experience, when I was like, I want to go to art school, it was like, but you're really good at science. Why don't you want to own a house? Don't you want to make money? You know, like, and it was like, I went to school for 2 years as a chemical engineer because everyone told me you're crazy. There's no money in, like, art isn't even an option. Right. And I think it just gets inundated. And I think that's why you get people who, the art side of our industry, people are so passionate about trying to help people because they've had enough courage or stupidity, just like, I'm not going to listen to other people tell me no. And they've been able to get there. And now you just have this desperate, I mean, you can hear it when you talk to both of you, right? Like you have this desperate need to tell people like, you can, like, this is something that is viable. If you love it, there's no reason not to do it, regardless of what people say. So yeah, I think it's built into society to kind of stop you from doing it.
It's definitely built into society, but it also, this is the way I've seen it trickle down. In my case, the way I see it trickle down is that then we start doubting ourselves and what our worth is. And therefore, people also, it translates into clients not wanting to pay us for the really hard work that we do. It starts being where we minimize the amount of work that we do. Oh, it's nothing. It's just because you're enjoying it or because it's art, all of a sudden and automatically, it becomes something that has a less value for some odd reason. And it is a lot of work. And when people actually see all of the work that we do, oh, that's a lot of work. Yeah, it actually is. You do spend hours trying to make something. You do spend hours on tutorials and online and trying to learn the software. It is a lot of work.
But Dorca, it's fun. It's fun. You love what you do.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Absolutely, 100%. Like, but that is just the thing, because it's art and it's fun. Supposedly, it doesn't need to be paid for. And so I've seen it trickle down from clients and even from our own selves, devaluing ourselves because this is supposedly not something that I should be paid for. So that's how I've seen that trickle down into our economics and even like having trouble. I've seen so many people, one of the biggest, again, in the Pen Animation group, how do I negotiate? How do I tell clients that I need to be paid for this? It is the biggest questions we get over and over, because of the devaluing that there is in a larger society from that standpoint.
Yeah, and it starts from the beginning. It's a deep-seated psychological barrier from the moment you pick up a pencil to the moment you try to give someone an invoice.
And also, Haley, I would love to have some cake from you.
Yeah. I'll try and get my dad to send it to the US. That's probably not going to happen, but you come here and I'll make it happen. Yeah,
we'll come there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got, like, everybody else knows my dad's a baker, so I thought, why not everyone who listens to Motion Hatch too? You know. But yeah, anyway, like what you were saying is really serious, and this is why I'm like trying to do Motion Hatch and things like that, not turning it around to this or anything, but the whole thing of like, I'm an artist, I'm a motion designer, I don't deserve to be paid because I like doing this. Like, oh, maybe if someone gives me a bit of money, I'm like lucky, like, you know, and it's like, no, you do deserve to be paid. You deserve to be paid like a lot. You know, you work really hard. Animation takes the longest time. Like when you kind of explain it to people more what you do and how many days things take, and get a bit more confident about maybe like, saying slightly a higher rate than you think that you can get, then you get into having proper conversations and you get to negotiate rather than just kind of starting at the bottom, which, I don't really agree with, like saying like, oh, this is what I want, but then I'm going to go lower because I don't think they're going to pay that. Like, I think that's crazy.
Well, it's never going to happen. You start high and you work your way down to something that agrees. You can never, very rarely go from, I think I should be getting paid 400, but I've only done it twice. So I'll ask for 250 and next time I'll ask for 300. Like no client is ever going to pay more for the same thing, and trying to ascribe new value to something you've already assigned. Like that's impossible. Like, no, I know. I think we're in a really interesting time period. I think, Dorca, you said it's growing pains. I think the entire creative industries are going to go through growing pains because this is kind of some futurism level of kind of exploration, but in a world where in the next 10 to 20 years, no manufacturing happens anymore by human hands. No transportation happens by people who are getting paid to drive trucks cross country. In a world where most menial tasks have been given a lot of value because it's work, I think there's going to be a fulcrum point where things switch almost completely, where everyone is going to actually start really highly respecting people who are creative, because it's one of the industries that's going to be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult to replicate through non-human hands. And we're going to be the people with jobs, like not good paying jobs, but with jobs. Like when you go to, no, I mean, seriously, like I can go into a convenience store or a shopping experience, walk in, buy my stuff and walk out and never interact with a human being. I can go into a McDonald's and never talk to someone, and the food could be made by a robot. Like that's a year away. Like McDonald's literally has a test kitchen that's doing that down the street from where I work. So all these jobs that people actually are describing worth and that are actually making their careers off of, trucks, like cross-country trucks are being tested right now, like where they drive the first mile with a human and then 90% of the time is being driven by an algorithm. Like all those jobs that are considered good, hardworking jobs are going to go away or going to be augmented greatly. And the jobs that are still going to be left, I think that there'll be a respect level in the next 10 to 20 years for creative people that the entire thing gets flipped, the entire storytelling about what you should do. And then maybe this is just the optimist in me, but I think arts education is actually going to be something of high value that people from a very early age, the same way right now we elevate sports in the United States, I think arts is going to have a ridiculous comeback in the same way, just in the way society approaches it.
I really hope so. From what I understand right now, they're actually taking away humanities and arts across even colleges or universities in the United States. They're pushing everyone into the STEM field, which I feel that it should be STEAM. Art should be in there. But they really are pushing everyone to be engineers and just pushing everyone to do the coding and the math and the science that is needed. And I really feel strongly that art needs to be in there. Design is very unappreciated. And I feel it's mostly, once again, because of all of the societal devaluation that we've done of it. That has a lot to do with it. And my hope is that, yes, that it does start to get valued as much. I really wish that this is true. I want to live in that world. I really do.
Well, I mean, it's always a sense of perspective, but I think it actively is. We're just not reaching back to like the beginning stages of it and teaching people as they come up. Like right now, like if you look at Apple versus Microsoft, in my mind, the only difference between Apple and Microsoft is art and design, right? Like if you actually look at it, like the thought process or the thing that they spend the most amount of research and time and capital on is the aspects of design, the aspects of the art side of the product, of the experience, of the actual physical interaction with the objects. And we have elevated that company to almost godlike status. And it literally is only because they will focus on the art as much as the tech, right? A very simple strategic decision as a company to say art and design is actually important. And look how much of a big differentiator that's made them in the entire industry, right? Like they're the most envied company in the world and have been for a long time because of that small decision. I think it's there. I think that we're in a great position as artists that want to teach that in 10 to 15 years when the world needs artists and designers, the people that are still here, when everybody else is going to be lawyers and doctors and engineers and nobody knows how to be taught, we'll be here saying, hey, we can show you. That's my hope. I think that's why things like Motion Hatch and School of Motion and MoGraph Mentor and all this stuff are just baby steps for what I think will eventually be an explosion. Like we talk about 3 or 4 places, there's going to be 50 places. There's going to be 100 places that you can go in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think I welcome that as well. I mean, like I just started this and, I didn't really feel like, basically because there wasn't anybody talking about the business side of motion design. Like it's like a super niche thing, but it's a big industry and no one's talking about it, and just trying to like get different voices out there and just kind of representing different people, getting different freelancers on, talking about how they run their business, like people who are full-time, like creative directors full-time, like you guys, like everybody, just bringing people on to talk about different experiences and different things that you can do in the industry and how we can like work through that, because I think that's super important, is kind of just having these kinds of discussions and just getting people thinking a bit more, because I think that's what progresses the industry, and also like trying to open up more conversations about talking to clients and pricing and things like that. And I think it's really nice that we touched on like what we think is going to happen in the future, because I think it's like, I feel like we've like gone through like loads of stuff, and I'm sure like we could probably talk about this for days, right? But like I think I think we're gonna have to like wrap it up soon. It's just getting like it's like super good though, and I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about this, because I think it's really, really important for everyone to think about. And especially, I mean, if you're like thinking about maybe doing a course or like going to art school or something, I think this is going to be so valuable. I just wanted to kind of ask you both like a final question, is if there's like one thing from our conversation today that you'd like the audience to take away, what would that be?
I think honestly, it's that kind of emphasis on people. Like I said, whether you're going to a 4-year school or you're trying to think of a way to like buy a computer and teach yourself, it's the same thing I tell people all the time. Get online, look up the studios that you love, start reaching out to the people, get on LinkedIn and find 5 people that work at the shop you love and reach out to them, ask them if you could do exactly what we're doing here. Can I get on Google Hangouts or Skype and talk to you? Could I pick your brain? Could I show you some work I'm doing and could you tell me how to make it better? To me, that's the best education you can have. And it's also kind of an insurance policy for your career going forward, right? You start creating advocates that root for you. You have people that, if I hear that there's a job opening somewhere, I have a list of 20 people that I'm going to help out, because they've reached out to me and asked for help. To me, I don't think that's what you think about when you think of education. You think of, do I buy this tutorial? Do I get this, program? Should I go to a school to, for a year and try to learn as much as I can? But I think that's the missing ingredient, is that invest as much in people as you do in software and hardware.
I'll have to give it a thought. I would say you need to do what's best for you as an individual, whether that is, there's some people who really thrive in being in an environment where there's people around them, and whether that's online, because it can be done online as well, to have a group of people. And I've seen it done in many places where there's a really positive environment that you can thrive in. Is a matter of, what Brian said, having that companionship, whether that is going to a 4-year school, if that's what's best for you or not. I don't feel at this point that people need to go to a 4-year school. I feel like they need to educate themselves in art and design. They need to educate themselves about even the basic principles of design. Is more important to have those there. And typography and all of those things that make our work wonderful. And that's what I would say. I feel like it is very much an individual decision for people to make. And that right now it is the most exciting time to have that individual decision, because there are so many options. You no longer have to be in a certain curriculum if you don't need to, if it's not something that's going to be of value to you. What is valuable to you as an individual, and what do you want to learn, and how far do you want to take your career, in which direction? And it is a very exciting time because there are so many options out there.
Yeah, I think what you both said was right. Like people need to think about like connecting with other people and getting into communities and things like that online, and just talking to people and asking what their experiences are. trying to find people in similar situations to you, I guess, and figure out like what your next step is, throughout your career, not just like at the start before you go to art school or before you take courses or whatever. Try and find people to connect with and guide each other, basically. Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to end the podcast. So I just want to ask you both, where can the audience find you and your work?
My website is dmusseb.com. That's DMUSSEB as in boy. And I'm on Instagram at @disanimator_dork.
Awesome. I love that name. You can always reach out to me on Twitter. It's Oddernod, ODDERNOD. And I just started doing this thing earlier this year where if you want to talk to me for like 15 minutes or you have a demo reel you want to kind of get a review on, there's a app called Calendly. I think it's like CALENDLY.com. If you put /Otternod on that, I literally, my lunch hour, I open up to anybody anywhere in the world. If you want to just do a Skype session or a hangout or just talk about like where you're at with your career, just reach out, book some time, and we can talk.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you both coming on the show. And I think that was a great one. I know that everyone's going to get so much out of it. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much again to Ryan and Dorca for coming on the show. I thought that was just such a great discussion. I really, really enjoyed chatting to them both. So yeah, please do go to the show notes, motionhatch.com/22, and find all the links there. Just a quick little reminder before you go, we will be launching the freelance contract bundle in October. So the freelance contract bundle is a set of contract templates for motion designers. It includes a commissioning contract and also a terms of service contract, which is basically like for projects where you go and work in-house for an agency, and the commissioning contract is more for direct to client work and things like that. So that's going to be launching in October. If you don't want to miss out on all the launch week fun that we're going to be having, then please do go over to motionhatch.com/contract and sign up there for more info and to be notified when it's released. I really appreciate you all listening. Thanks so much. Please do let me know what you thought of this episode. You can head over to Twitter or Instagram. We are @motionhatch. I love to hear from you. Thanks so much. See ya.